Clerk Gummow, will you please call the roll?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll start with Mr. Schultz. I saw the wave. Thank you, Steve. Mr. Tassoni.
Present.
Mr. Webster.
Here.
Mr. Westcott. Mr. Westcott. Mr. Zintak.
Here.
Mr. Arena.
Here.
Mr. Billich. Mr. Billich. Mr. Booker. Mr. Booker. Mr. Butita.
Here.
Mrs. Crosby.
Here.
Mr. Fellers.
Here.
Mr. Fiducia.
Here.
Mr. Girl.
Present.
Mrs. Gorel.
Present.
Mr. Hoffman.
Present.
Mr. Kelly.
Here.
Mr. McDonald.
Here.
Mr. Neighbors.
Here.
Mrs. Red.
Present.
Mr. Salgado.
Present.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I have 17 present and 3 absent.
Thank you, Clerk Gummow. We'll now turn this, and we have Mr. Booker here as well.
Okay,
Did you
thank
get
you.
him? Yep.
Hello, Mr. Booker.
Hi.
We will mark Mr. Booker present.
Thank you, Clerk Gummow. Now I'll hand this over to Board Member Mrs. Gorel for our invocation and Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear board members, as we gather here this evening, may we all pray to our God for solidarity, not only in this room or rooms, but for all mankind. The last 10 months, we have been plagued not only in our country, but all around the world with COVID-19. Thank your God for the thousands of people like my family and I who got the COVID virus are still here to talk about it. Please pray for the family and friends who have lost loved ones to the virus. Also pray for the people who have lost their lives, homes, and livelihood to fires, hurricanes, flooding in our country this past 10 months too. We have been through so much, and I just prayed that we're going to come through this. We always have, we always will. And thank your God for our first responders and essential workers. What would we do without these angels? Amen. I pledge allegiance
To the
to
flag.
the flag of the United States
States of America.
the
To the
republic
republic
For which
which
it
is
which
stands,
stands,
one nation,
nation,
under God,
Under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty
liberty,
and justice
and
for
justice
all.
for all.
Thank you, Mrs. Gorel, for succinctly recapping 2020. One brief agenda update. There will be a brief closed session at the end of the meeting to discuss pending litigation. There are no awards, proclamations, or presentations. Mr. Thompson, is everyone signed up for public comment tonight?
No, I don't have anyone signed up, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman. Thank you.
And we'll pass it up, move it over to board member correspondence. Correspondence from the board. Seeing none, we will move on to the chairman's report. There is no chairman's report. Announcements and communications, Clerk Gummow.
The items received, whereas correspondence, are listed below.
Thank you, Clerk Gummow. Those will be placed on file. Moving on to our consent agenda, which I'd like to note this time also includes the bills which were passed out in a packet via email. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Mr. Girl. May I have a second?
second.
Second by Mr. Zintak and Mrs. Gorel. Is there anyone opposed to the consent, to the motion approving the consent agenda? Seeing no opposition, I will ask the clerk to cast a yes vote for all members present. Motion is approved. County Administrator's report. Mr. Thompson.
No report this evening, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Any department head updates tonight?
No, there are not.
Okay. I just want to call attention to the packet sent by Dr. Martell and the Limerick County Health Department that came out today regarding additional mitigation rules going into effect. Any questions, reach out to the Winnebago County Health Department. All right. Unfinished business. We have 4 board appointments. And we also have a resolution opposing the county executive form of government. See, Mr. Kelly? You're on mute, Mr. Kelly?
There we go. I'd like to move to take the appointments off the table again and plead with people to stop the vendetta against Haney and approve these highly qualified individuals.
I have a impassioned motion from Mr. Kelly. May I please have a second? A second by Mrs. Crosby. This is a non-debatable item, so I will ask the clerk to call the roll on removing items A, B, C, and D from the table.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We will start with Mr. Tassoni,
No.
Mr. Webster,
No.
thank you. Mr. Westcott is still absent. Mr. Zintak,
No.
Mr. Arena,
No.
Mr. Billich is still absent. Mr. Booker,
No.
Mr. Butita,
Yes.
Mrs. Crosby,
Yes.
Mr. Fellers,
Yes.
Mr. Fiducia,
No.
Mr. Girl,
No.
Mrs. Gorel,
No.
Mr. Hoffman,
No.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald,
No.
Mr. Neighbors,
Yes.
Mrs. Red,
No.
Mr. Salgado,
No.
Mr. Schultz. Mr. Schultz,
That's a no.
that's a no. Thank
That's-
you, Mr.
We'll
Schultz,
cast
for
a
the
no
head
for Mr.
shake.
Schultz.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Chairman, that is 5 yes, 13 no, and 2 absent, sir.
Motion fails. Is there any other action from the board for unfinished business? Seeing none, we will move on to our standing committee reports. First, Finance Committee, Mr. Salgado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bear with me. I'm going to pull up the agenda item just so I have it here.
Mr. Fellers, did you miss number E?
I asked if there was, yes, Mrs. Girl, I asked if there was any additional action on unfinished business items. There were no motions from the board, so we moved on to the next agenda item.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have 2 items for the Finance Committee. The first is a budget amendment 2020-024, County Highway FedEx fee transfer laid over from the October 8th, 2020 meeting, and I so move.
All right, I have a motion on the budget amendment 2020-024, the county highway FedEx fee transfer, which was laid over from the October 8th, 2020 meeting. May I please have a second? Second by Mr. Hoffman. Mr. Salgado, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. Just real quick on this, it's just a fee transfer of about $263,000 from one fund to the other, just to make sure that it was allocated properly. That's what it's about.
Give me a moment while my internet connection stabilizes. Okay. Any questions from the board? Seeing none, are there any board members opposed to this budget amendment? Seeing no opposition, I will ask the clerk to cast a yes vote for all board members present. Motion is approved. Mr. Salgado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our next item is 2020 tax levy ordinance laid over from October 8th, 2020 meeting. And so I so move on that.
I have a motion on the 2020 tax levy ordinances, which were laid over from the October 8th, 2020 meeting. May I have a second, please? I have a second by Mr. Gurl, and Mr. Salgado, pass it back to you.
Thank you. And this is just the standard for all the tax levy ordinances for our various funds that we collect the taxes from. So this is pretty standard from that. So yeah, let's take a vote.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments from board members? Seeing none, are there any board members who are approved to the 2020 tax levy ordinance? I have a no vote for Mr. Schultz.
Me?
And all right, let's just go. I've got Clerk Gamal. Let's go ahead and just call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We will start with Mr. Webster.
No.
Mr. Westcott is still absent. Mr. Zintak,
No.
Mr. Arena,
Yes.
Mr. Village is still absent. Mr. Booker,
No.
Mr. Butita,
Yes.
Mrs. Crosby,
No.
Mr. Fellers,
Yes.
Mr. Fiducia,
Yes.
Mr. Gurl,
Yes.
Mrs. Gorel,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
Mr. Neighbors,
Yes.
Mrs. Red,
Yes.
Mr. Salgado,
Yes.
Mr. Schultz. That's a no, Mr. Schultz. Thank you. Mr. Tassoni,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, that's 13 yes, 5 no, and 2 still absent.
Thank you, Clerk Gamal. The motion passes. Mr. Salgado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to allude, we're looking to have a joint meeting coming up with Policies and Personnel Committee on the nursing home, the River Bluff Nursing Home. So keep a lookout for that. Hopefully everybody can join us and we'll talk about the various things going out there and what we can do to help the nursing home out there. So be on the lookout for that.
Thank you, Mr. Salgado. Zoning Committee, Mr. Webster.
Thank you. Zoning Committee has 2 items this evening. They're in for a layover, but both of them sailed through Zoning Board of Appeals and Zoning Committee, unanimous approval on both. So item number 1 is Z0720. And item number 2 is Z0820. These are both map amendments and they are both in District 1. And if you vote to approve these this evening, if you want to suspend on these, I don't think there'd be an issue with them or not. And you could get this one wiped off the docket then. If not, I'm okay.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. Let's officially consider those read in. And Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Chairman. I move to suspend the rules.
I have a motion.
Well, we got to move to
Yeah,
approve these.
No,
First, I
no,
wanna
we
move-
do suspend the rules first, Mr. Webster, before we can make a motion to approve.
Yes, I need to get a motion to approve.
No, Mr. Webster, we need to suspend the rules because they're in for a layover. We can't have a motion to approve without a suspension. It's okay. You're just backwards. We have to suspend the rules first, then we can have a motion.
Yeah, okay, whatever.
So I have a motion by Mr. Kelly to suspend the rules on these items. And was it a second by Mrs. Gorel?
Yes.
A second by Mrs. Gorel. Is there any objection to suspending the rules?
Mr. Chairman, that's to suspend on both of these.
On both items, correct.
Thank you. Just needed that clarification.
Thank you. Is there any objection to suspending the rules on both items?
No, just to be sure on this legally now, can we vote on both of these together, or do we need a separate vote on these? And I'm asking our state's attorney.
Mr. Kalikas, would you like to clarify that we can suspend the rules on both items at the same time?
I absolutely think that you can, Chairman, and you might want to consider each of them and had to have a separate vote on each item, but you can vote to suspend the rules as to both of them, yes.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Kalikas. I'll go back to the previous question. Is there any objection to suspending the rules on both of these items? Seeing none, consider the rules are the rules are suspended. Mr. Webster, I'll pass it back to you.
Okay, I would move to approve Z0720 then.
Okay, I have a motion to approve Z0720, a map amendment to rezone 0.53 acres of the agricultural priority district to the industrial heavy industrial district, 2758 Allworth Road in Winnebago, District 1. May I have a second, please? Second by Mr. Kelly. Any questions from board members? Seeing none, is there any board member opposed to the motion? Seeing no opposition, I'll ask the clerk to cast a yes vote for all members present. Mr. Webster.
Okay, I would move to approve Z0820.
I have a motion to approve Z0820, a map amendment to rezone 1.777 acres from the Ag Agricultural Priority District to the A2 Agriculture Related Business District for the property at Allworth Road and Kelly Road in District 1. May I please have a second? Second by Mr. Zintak. Are there any board members opposed to this motion? Seeing no opposition, I'll ask the clerk to cast a yes vote for all members present. The motion passes. Mr. Webster.
That's all we have this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. It doesn't look like Mr. Billich is here, so we'll pass on the economic.
No report. No report.
No report. Thank you, Mrs. Rudd. Mr. McDonald, Operations and Administrative Committee.
No report.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Mr. Sassoni, Public Works Committee.
Thank you, Chairman. We have no report.
Thank you, Mr. Tassoni. Mr. Booker, Public Safety Committee.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I have 5 resolutions. Okay, resolution number 1, or number 2 here on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the chairman of the county board to execute an independent contractor agreement for services as Winnebago County Community Liaison. And I so move.
I have a motion on a resolution authorizing the chairman of the county board to execute an independent contractor agreement for services as Winnebago County Community Liaison. May I please have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Zintak. Any discussion on the matter? Mr. Webster?
Thank you. What's the cost on this?
It's $12,000, Mr. Webster. So it's a 1-year contract and it's for $12,000. It's between
Is
the
this
county and Tommy Meeks.
Oh, yeah, this is for Tommy. Okay.
Any other questions from board members? Seeing none, are there any board members opposed to this motion? Seeing no opposition, I will ask the clerk to cast a yes vote for all members present. Mr. Booker.
Thank you, Mr. Fellers. Number 3 on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the chairman of the county board to execute a memorandum of agreement between Winnebago County 17th Judicial Circuit and Remedies Renewing Lives Incorporated. And I so move.
Thank you, Mr. Booker. I have a motion on a resolution authorizing the chairman of the county board to execute a memorandum of agreement between Winnebago County, the 17th Judicial Circuit, and Remedies Renewing Lives Incorporated. May I have a second, please? Second by Mr. Hoffman. Any discussion from board members? Mr. Arena, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just to confirm, I'm recalling correctly, this is being funded through the public safety sales tax. Is that correct, Mr. Thompson?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And it's the same dollar amount as the current year contract. There's no increase in cost.
Right. And we determined in committee that this had been accounted for in the budget we just passed, correct?
That's correct.
So what I want to just bring to everyone's attention is, I think over this next year, we need to take a look at what we're funding through the public safety sales tax and what items are appropriately funded through that source and what should be funded through the mental health tax, so that next budget cycle, there's no question, this item and the next item might be ones that could be shifted over. So it's just, and I know we have obligations under the public safety sales tax to fund alternative programs, but I just don't know what those amounts are. And I think we just need to get it very clear for all of us moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rena. And clerk, would you please note that Mr. Billich and Mr. Westcott have both joined the meeting. Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's important that we remember that the way the Mental Health Board works is that agencies, nonprofits, whatnot, will submit grant applications, and that's how the money gets dispersed. And so we probably need to put together a grant application to get these services like remedies taken care of by that tax.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Any additional discussion from board members? Mr. Neighbors.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly, for that reminder. And that's exactly what I wanted to get at. We can't just take money from the mental health fund and just allocate it wherever we want it to go. I mean, that's not how we had it designed to do from the beginning when we talked to the voters, or the way the way we allocate the funds for the mental health tax. So just keep that in mind, and we just can't do that.
Thank you, Mr. Neighbors. Is there any discussion from board members?
Mr. Fellers?
Yeah,
I have a question.
Just a quick reminder, we need to stay on topic here as it relates to this resolution, not the makeup and the bylaws of the Winnebago County Health Board, Mental Health Board, and that sales tax. So let's just stay on topic as it relates to this agreement between the county, the judicial circuit, and Remedies Renewing Lives. Mrs. Gorel, you have the floor.
I will speak at this time. I'll do it another time.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Gorel. Mrs. Red?
Okay, I'm not sure if this is appropriate. Did I understand Mr. Neighbors say that they are planning on doing applications?
So yes, so I'd say let's leave this conversation to a different topic. We can
Okay.
There are additional questions on how the Mental Health Board will be funding programs. I would suggest we bring them in to answer questions, and we can actually make some time on the agenda for that. But are there any questions as it relates to the motion authorizing the agreement on the on this resolution? Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry for asking for a second time, but I think what we need to remember is we need the agreement to be renewed, and then we will be deciding on how to apply for a grant from, in order to pay for it from the mental health tax.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Any further discussion? Seeing none, are there any board members who are opposed to this motion? Seeing no opposition, I'll ask the clerk to cast a yes vote for all members present. Mr. Booker.
Thank you, Mr. Fellers. I agree with Mr. Arena that the next resolution may tie into it, but again, that and as Mr. Kelly said, that this does need to move into discussion, but right now we just need to authorize the next resolution, number 4 on the agenda, authorizing the chairman of the county board to execute an agreement with Rosecrans Incorporated for the jail alternative treatment program. And I so move.
I have a motion on a resolution authorizing the chairman of the county board to execute an agreement with Rosecrans Incorporated for the jail alternative treatment program. Second by Mrs. Crosby. Questions or discussion from the board? Seeing none, are there any board members opposed to this motion? Then we will ask the clerk to cast a yes vote for all members present. Motion passes. Mr. Booker.
Thank you, Chairman. And the final resolution is authorizing execution of an intergovernmental cooperation agreement with the Forest Preserves of Winnebago County for police services. And I so move.
All right, I have a motion by Mr. Booker on a resolution authorizing the execution of an intergovernmental cooperation agreement with the Forest Preserves of Winnebago County for police services, and seconded by Mr. Zintak. Any discussion from board members? Seeing none, are there any board members opposed to this motion? Seeing no opposition, I'll ask the clerk to cast a yes vote for all members present. Mr. Booker.
Thank you, Chairman, and that concludes our report.
Thank you, Mr. Booker. Policies, Personnel and Policies Committee, Mr. Fiducia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Personnel and Policies brings in 4 resolutions this evening. The first resolution is a resolution authorizing River Bluff Home to admit out-of-county residents. I so move, and I'd like to speak to that for a second.
Great. I have a motion by Mr. Fiducia on a resolution authorizing River Bluff Nursing Home to admit out-of-county residents. May I have a second, please? A second by Mr. Kelly. Mr. Fiducia, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to assure the board members that no Winnebago County resident will be turned away. Reference this. This is something that needed to be done probably for the 12 years that I've been on the board, and I would strongly urge my fellow board members to back this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Fiducia. Is there any discussion or comments or questions from board members?
I would like to make one.
Go ahead, Mrs. Gorel.
This, as Mr. Fiducia said, this is something that should have gone on a long time ago. We have to remember we're in a changing world right now, and we have parents, we have relatives that have retired to other states, and now they become ill, they've lost a partner, want to come back. And the way ours reads, they have to be in Winnebago County for 1 year before they can go into River Bluff Nursing Home. This will open that up so people can bring back their loved ones and bring them back to Winnebago County, especially at one time or another they came from Winnebago County. The other thing is, if you've read the paper this last week, Boone County, their nursing home, they're talking about selling it. It's a very small one. Those would be patients, those would be residents that would be coming into our Winnebago County. The same thing with Stevenson County. Stevenson County, for about 5 years, has had problems with their little nursing home. And right now, that last weekend, they had a big infection of COVID, and they were looking for 30 places to put people into other nursing homes. And because our county nursing homes are the ones that take care of Medicaid, other nursing homes don't. So we really need to take this serious and open us up for out-of-state or out-of-county people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Gorel. One quick question that I have then is how is this going to be managed? Is it open to anyone that wants to come to the region? Is it open to, do you have to be in a neighboring county or have a relative in the area? And how do we ensure that if it does get full, that we can also take in new county residents as the need becomes there? Is there someone that can speak to that?
I'd like to defer that to Ms. McDermott.
Ms. McDermott, you are muted still.
There you go, Pat.
Okay. I would suggest that we would have a number, that over that number, we would stop out of state, out of county residents, so that we were always sure to have plenty of beds available for county residents. We have a long way to go to that, especially after the COVID crisis, to get to that number. And Angie's absolutely correct. We had a call to take up to 30 residents from Stevenson County. We couldn't do it. Public Health actually called me today asking, could I take 4 residents? And I unfortunately had to tell them, no, I can't take them from out of county. So even in an emergent situation, I couldn't help out another county nursing home to place these people. So we would always, should we get to the point, we would, have a magic number that we said, past this, we will always give preferential treatment to county residents.
Great. Mr. Kelly?
Thank you, Chairman. Foolish to have empty beds and restrictions on admissions at the same time, as we're in the midst of a financial crisis.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
Kelly, Mr. Tassoni?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and whoever can best answer this question. My one thought is there, based on whether you're a Winnebago County resident or not, is there a difference in the fee structure, or is it what Medicaid, Medicare pays and that's it?
It can only be what Medicare and Medicaid pays. Most facilities, most privately owned facilities, take out of state, out of county residents. We're only allowed to charge, it's a mixed rate, so it's melded based on all the different needs of the resident. So we have a rate that changes every quarter, and that would be the rate. We couldn't up it for out of county people.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tassoni. I have Mr. Arena next. Mr. Arena?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm reading the resolution, and I know we've talked about giving priority consideration to Winnebago County residents, but, and right now it's, the circumstances are such that we have plenty of room, but this agreement will probably survive all of us. Shouldn't it be in here somehow that we're, the priority is to our residents, or, what if it changes in 5 years and the place is full and there's competition for beds, and different people are involved? They might not recall the conversation we had here today. I don't know, maybe someone from the state's attorney's office could weigh in on that. What controls that? What protects our residents and for them to have access?
So I'll ask Mrs. McDermott here, or I guess the other thought on this, is this something that would be controlled by the River Bluff Board, that this is, once we make this available, that they would set policy?
Okay.
I see, Mr. Thompson, I see you nodding your head that this would be a decision, this would be part of the River Bluff Nursing Home Board.
Yes,
am I
I
correct?
think that's absolutely correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
So if things go wrong in the future and we have residents of Winnebago County who don't have access, what would be their recourse? They would come to the board again to address that issue, or how would it get corrected?
It's Mr. Arena, that the board could change could do the same thing and push forth a resolution saying that we were not taking any more county residents. But as it relates to the administration of those policies, right, that would be up to the purview of the River Bluff Operating Board or Governing Board.
Yes, that's correct. Ultimately, it's up to the county board. They have the final say on this, but you're absolutely right. The nursing home advisory board would establish those policies.
And so that'll get established now.
And also remember, on our board for the nursing home, we also have a state attorney representative that would be guiding us through that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arena. Any other comments from board members? Seeing none, are there any board members opposed to this motion? Seeing no opposition, I'll ask the clerk to cast a yes vote for all members present. Mr. Fiducia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have three more resolutions. They're all relating to insurance. I'll read through them very fast. Resolution authorizing the execution of a renewal agreement with Blue Cross Blue Shield for the administration of a self-insured POS and PPO insurance plan. Would it be in our best interest for me to read them all and just vote them all in one block, or?
Yeah, if you'd like to make a motion to take them all at once and read them in, I think they're all, looks like they're all fairly similar, so we can take them all at once.
I'd like to make a motion. Let me read them all in and we can all vote on them at once.
Go ahead. You can go ahead and just read them in, Mr. Fiducia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next one is a resolution authorizing the execution of a renewal agreement with the Northern Illinois Health Plan, NIPH, for the third-party administration services. The next one is a resolution authorizing the execution of agreement with AmWins, a group of benefits for administration of a Medicare supplemental insurance plan and Part D drug plan for offered to retirees over the age of 65. And I would so move all three of them.
I think I have a motion for items 3, 4, and 5. May I have a second? Second by Mr. Hoffman. Before we go into discussion on this, is there any board member that would like to take any of these items separately? Seeing none, I will open the floor to discussion. Mr. Fiducia, I'll pass it back to you if you want to add any to this. Otherwise, other board members.
I have nothing, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any questions from board members on this? Seeing none, are there any board members opposed to items 3, 4, and 5? Seeing no opposition, we will cast a yes vote for all members present. Motion passes. Mr. Fiducia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Mr. Salgado stated earlier, we are going to be having a meeting referenced River Bluff's future. I would urge all board members to attend or Zoom in on this. Thank you. That concludes our report.
Thank you, Mr. Fiducia. Is there any new business before the county board? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to go into closed session to discuss pending litigation. I have a motion by Mr. Gurl. May I have a second, please? Second by Mr. Schultz.
Fellers, can you make that pending and potential litigation, please?
Sure thing. I've modified the motion to go into closed session to discuss pending and potential litigation. May I have a second, please? All right, second by Mr. Schultz. Do we need a roll? I forget. Do we need a roll call vote for a closed session? That'd be, I think,
Yes.
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 Mr. Gurl, will you please call the roll?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Westcott,
Yes.
Mr. Zintak,
Here. Yes.
Mr. Arena,
Yes.
Mr. Billich,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Butita,
Yes.
Mrs. Crosby,
Yes.
Mr. Fellers,
Yes.
Mr. Fiducia,
Yes.
Mr. Gurl,
Yes.
Mrs. Gorel,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly, Mr. Kelly. We'll come back to him. Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
Mr. Neighbors,
Yes.
Mrs. Rudd,
Yes.
Mr. Salgado,
Yes.
Mr. Schultz. That's a yes. Mr. Tassoni,
Yes.
Mr. Webster.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Want to call Mr. Kelly again?
There's Mr. Kelly, the motion to go into closed session.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. 20 yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The motion passes. We'll take a quick break here. I'll ask the help desk to transfer host control to me so we can shut down the live stream on YouTube and change over the recording.